Hello and welcome to the Innovative Yogis podcast. We believe that a union between modern technology and ancient wisdom will make possible a world of abundance, sustainability, and purpose for all. But we must choose it. Life on Earth is at a tipping point, and it's up to each one of us to decide which path we take. In each episode, we'll highlight the work of everyday changemakers who are shifting the consciousness right now and offer our insights on how the dots connect. Join us as we envision a beautiful future for all life on the planet. Today we're hearing from Penpa, a Tibetan, a global citizen, a yogi, a dot connector, and co-founder of Innovative Yogis. We hope you enjoy this episode as Penpa shares her vision from her heart.
If I'm to speak from my heart, I would say that another world filled with much more beauty, understanding, love, kinship, creativity, collaboration, innovation, richness, health, and joy is very, very possible. If I speak from my heart, I would say that in this very moment, we listen to what's going on right here in our minds, in our breath, in our gut, in our body, in our atmosphere, in our home, in our neighbors, in our communities, and around. And if I listen, I can hear the cries of sensations and thoughts and feelings and emotions of the atmosphere, the wind, the earth, the fire, the water, all of it. Requesting, demanding, begging, this one thing, that don't separate me, that love me, that connect to me, that don't part and become disembodied from me, that reconcile all these conflicts, the separation that our mind has done of things we find aversive, of things we value so less from the rational mind, that it asks, will you pause, sit still, lay still, and listen to the equalness of the values of all that's arising, that we remain unbiased to what comes up as pleasurable and what comes up as aversive, that what comes up as neutral, that all of this is a play of reality, of causes and conditions, that if we would like to live in a more harmonious world, that we would need to prioritize our heart, our compassion, our awakened mind, our awakened heart, that can discern and reason that there is no me, that there is no I, independent of everyone else's grace, everybody else's karma, cause and effect and conditions. That this I has a free will, but yet it is in connection with the rest of the existence, that it is not an isolated, independent self that is making a choice. We have seen the damage that an attitude like that has done to whole humanity and all the existence here. The patriarchal attitude that says that the patriarch, the father of the family, is more important than the rest of the family members. That here I'm not advocating for matriarchy as well, that we value the mothers as more superior to everybody else in the family. That the child is equally as important in the family as the mother and the father. That we are all equally valuable. That we each have teachings to teach each other. And what a beautiful manifestation this existence is, that our intolerance, that our aversion and our addictions teaches us exactly where we have disconnected, that we have othered. And as a result of that, all the biases, the prejudices, the racism, the supremacies, the classisms and the sexisms and the destruction of our life source, this Mother Earth, and her all babies, her all creations. When we think about water or atmosphere or the fire element, the abuse of the oil, all of it comes as a result of disconnecting from this understanding that I cannot breathe fresh air in my own home, no matter how much technology that I can accumulate to purify the home, no matter how much materials that we can accumulate to protect us from touching the reality, that when we get out of our home, or even within our home, even within our body and within our mind, that we see the cost and the price of not living our day-to-day life with this truth, that we are interconnected, that the existence cannot come into manifestation without the interconnected manifestation. And once we really analyze and investigate this truth, that what is in the manifestation that has independently arose, we look at the tree. Did it arose on its own, without the sun, water, the earth, seed, the birds, the pollinators, the wind? And similarly, did this solid I that we are so gung-ho on protecting, that we're willing to kill the rest of the humanity, does that exist on its own? Isn't that dependent on the nurturing of that self, is dependent on the grace, love, and the hard work of others, whether it's the streets on which our cars and our public transportation run on, or the food that comes into our stomach that has to go through miles and miles to get here, and those who have actually sowed the seed. And when we disconnect from paying those farmers, our food growers with minimum wage, that their livelihood is not sustainable, and we expect that when they grow these foods that they will grow it with lots of love and openness and compassion and joy. And that is not true when we know how we function in our real life, when our families are struggling, when our health is struggling, when our love and heart and all of this is struggling, that we would spill out the residual, or we even carry that and project it upon others. So considering all of this, the interconnectedness of the light and the dark, and the neutral, the grays, all of that, when we recognize it, then we get a chance and a choice of the free will to say, how do I want to show up, knowing this independent and this interdependent origin of manifestation? How do I bridge with the supremacists? Terry Real, a family therapist, has a beautiful, it's not probably new, we have heard it before, the way he puts it is beautiful. This swing between the grandiosity and the shame, where the oppressed feels lots of shame and the oppressor feels a lot of grandiosity and arrogance and pride. Yet within that yang is the yin of feeling not enough. Despite having an oppressive position, despite being privileged, that there is an emptiness that consumes all the earth's resources, and yet it is not enough. That hungry ghost, if you want to tame that hungry ghost, we can only tame it through understanding of the truth. And out of that understanding arises this compassion that is unbiased, that doesn't say, I'm only going to love you because you show the light part of you to me. And when you show the toxic part of me, then I reject you. Because that pattern is exactly happening within us, ourselves. That these emotions like anger, rage, and shame, and guilt, and criticism, and sadness, and despair, and hopelessness, and depression, and anxiety, and all of these are unwelcomed in us. But I only welcome joy and pleasure and happiness and lightness and beauty and magic and all of this. It's impractical when we recognize how interdependent it is, that the fruit on the tree comes from the good job that the microorganisms that did in the soil underground, that everybody did it without, and those insects never see the daylight. When they see it, they die, and yet they work in order to bring the fruit and the flowers on the top. That the flower, if it can feel that the beauty that I have, the privilege that I have to look beautiful and magnificent and colorful and vibrant, is as a result of a good compost, a good composition, the whole composition, that it is not a separate isolated case. So when we recognize it, how do we on daily basis show up and live our lives? A lot of time we focus on changing the external. With the background of being a refugee, Tibetan refugee myself, and working in non-profit afterwards, most of my life is spent in this desire to eliminate suffering from the world, yet not being able to eliminate those sufferings within myself. And when we sit with emotions and thoughts and baggages, we realize that they cannot be eliminated by force, that they have to dissolve on their own through understanding of the makeup of those, the messages, the lessons and the wisdom and the jewel embedded in each of those aversive sensations and feelings and addictions. That there is the gem, there is the key to our liberation, from which we can live this life much more freely. And even when we have these realizations, our body and mind are still habituated into the conditioning of neurosis, of looking at life through this confused lens, that there is a suffering and I need to eliminate it, instead of this is already a pure realm. And if we are suffering, it's a suffering as a result of separating ourselves from each other. That if we could come together and bridge all those gaps, that this is the heaven on earth, that this is the paradise, and that it is possible. So with that knowing, what can you do right now, in this very moment? That you can come back to your mind, to your body and breath, and see if they're in alignment. Is the breath shallow in the chest, anxiety-ridden? Is the heart closed as a result of depression that we're holding in our womb, the traumas that we have not processed and understood? And how's the body? Is it relaxed? And how's the mind? Is it controlling this whole show with its story, with its independent self, that selfish self story, that very self-centered, narcissistic, obsessed with self-preservation? That can we, with our investigative mind, see that we are already surviving? That if we are in the United States, it is one of the most privileged countries in the whole world. That if people here cannot feel that the self-preservation is taken care of, what is the chance in the world? But we use materials to preserve our sense of self. And that sense of self, because it's not born out of independently, it's insatiable. There is a void and emptiness that no matter how many stuff that we put it in, that it cannot be filled up, because it needs to be filled by immaterial. And those immaterials are foremost love, compassion, patience, grace. That when we see that we are getting impatient, that we recognize within ourselves the body is already have been intolerant to what's arising. That can we, instead of numbing it, distracting it, and covering it up with some other stuff, that can we bare naked to those and listen, like listening to secrets, like the secrets are being told in whispers. And the whispers are so subtle and they're trapped in the spaces of your body, that if you can listen to those, the sensations in our body, what are they asking for? And if you could provide it, those with our presence and with our relaxation, with our letting go of this grasping and clinging, that there is a potential for healing in that very right moment. That the world doesn't have to change in order for us to express the best version of ourselves. And this is not an easy process. And it's not going to be easy in the beginning, because there's always a little bit of effort that's necessary to decondition. The conditionings are so strong, the current of the conditionings. So we have to pause and allow those to be finished in order for us for our wisdom and insight to dawn. And so that's how much patience we need. So suppose say that we are very honest person, ruthless in his honesty, then the path would be shorter. But it's not just honesty. Along with honesty, if there is lack of compassion, it's going to be traumatic journey. So can we have the wisdom, the investigation, the wisdom component, and the compassion, the gentleness that understands the thickness, the solidification of the conditionings of a habitual pattern that traps and binds us in this matrix? If we can understand all of those, then this path could become a gradual, step by step, which is the shortest path, actually, because we don't have to redo. We don't have to come back again and again to the same lesson, because we're very aware of how it all came to be, and we're taking very intentional steps that lead to mastery of how this reality is. And from that space, we can relate with anybody who brings their hearts, their stories, their gems to us, that we will not run away from holding spaces and being friends, true friends and lovers and siblings to each other. That we would extend understanding to everyone else, because we have extended that understanding to ourselves first and bridge all those gaps within ourselves. And if we are expecting perfection from the get-go, ask, how arrogant will somebody need to be to get 100% without any practice? And constantly investigate all of these, that we could remain humble in our interconnectedness. It doesn't mean we have to be submissive. We have a right to speak our truth. And that is the only right we have, is to speak our truth. Not enforce our truth on somebody, not expect somebody to live our truth. When we expect others to live our truth, there's frustration because we're not living ours. And I do this with my husband all the time, because I'm not able to show up to my own needs and deepest aspiration, that I want him to live that. And we do that with our children, because we have not lived the life we wanted to live, that we force those lives on our children, when our children have a whole different purpose and agenda on their own, that we don't allow them to bloom into the flower that's unique, that's theirs. Instead, we force our colors on them and our qualities and textures on them. So being mindful of that, in the sense that how can we step back, hold the space like the sky to all the clouds and everything else that comes in, like the earth that allows for everybody to come in, and yet be intentional in our support by being skillful, by taking our agenda off and considering the person whom we are supporting's agenda. And then also recognizing the interconnected existence and how to be most skillful in our expression of these truths. My prayer from my heart is that you realize the truth of reality in such a way that you can live a liberated life, and the manifestation and the actions that you do and you take are in the best and the highest purpose of the self that is interconnected to the rest of the existence, that is in alignment with the cosmos and all its existence, that what you do is in alignment with your speech, with your mind and your body and your energies. and that you take, even if it's a one step towards being kinder to yourself, that you do that, even if that's appreciating this magnificent earth, the flowers, the sky. But may you look down and touch upon the earth. May you look at your feet and remember that it's still walking on earth, and that below the earth lies organisms that are dependent on how harshly that we walk in this earth in order for their lives, for their purpose to be fulfilled. May you thank your family members for whatever they brings on the table. May you look at them with eyes of love and understanding. And even if we become impatient and we don't want to do it, may you have compassion for that part of you that doesn't want to be forced to do it. And you have absolute right to be not forced, that this has to be your own volition, that you have to make a choice of how you want to walk on this earth. That we can only request, inform, educate, and inspire. But it is absolutely an individual journey to waking up. And a beautiful world is possible, and it already is here in our family, in our body, in our communities, and in the world. That we focus on the whole truth and not a part truth, so we can make a sound decision on how to move and exist and live and manifest our potential. Thank you.